You stare at your camera. Well, great. Another meeting on that thing. That definitely could have been an email. If this seems to be your life, keep watching. Hi, I'm Sarah Wilson, a fractional COO and operational turnaround partner for SMB. I help scaling companies unlock growth with the amazing teams and tools they already have. I help install structure and scalable processes that turn ambition into execution. Meeting overload is a very real thing in business. Here's what the research tells us. The average person spends over 11 hours a week in meetings. Now, I know a lot of people watching this are going to experience even more hours in a given week. And given an average work week is typically 40 hours, 11 being the average is crazy. And I know that with different roles I've held in my career, that number is usually much, much more. I know at times in my own career, there have been days that I barely have 30 minutes in between each meeting to, eat something, take a break, take a breather. And it gets even worse than that. According to data published in 2026, hours wasted in unproductive meetings has doubled since 2019. We're roughly at about 5 hours per employee in meetings that others feel are unproductive. Across an entire year, that is a crazy amount of time. 6 full work weeks sitting in meetings that didn't need to happen. Or, like I said, could have been an email. And think about the economic impact for a minute. Some estimates have ineffective meetings costing north of $37 billion within the US economy alone. And while I'm personally located in Canada, I wanted to share that stat with you to help you understand the scale of the problem. Today, I'm going to dig into some strategies to help reduce meeting times for everyone. As we do, I invite you to think about how your own team works and which one of these might work best for you and your business. So let's get into it. So the first pillar of reducing your meeting times is using the communication tools that you have effectively. Said another way, stop defaulting to a meeting when you have other channels and methods of communication that would work better. Additional research from 2026 has 55% of respondents who work remotely believe the majority of their meetings could have been handled through either email or other asynchronous communication channels. Nearly half of millennials surveyed say they handle their work better through async channels versus actually sitting in meetings. And here's a really surprising stat. When organizations cut their meeting times by 40%, their productivity jumped by 71% and satisfaction increased by 52%. Those are some pretty big numbers and pretty big impact for reducing meeting time. Putting the fear aside for a minute, I want to acknowledge the fear that might come with reducing meeting times. I mean, we got here for a lot of really important business reasons. I know that people in business want to ensure that the whole team is on the same page. And they want to, we defaulted to meetings because we also understand that people on the team have varying levels of comprehension. And because of that, it feels like a meeting is the answer. Well, it doesn't have to be. And here's how using different async communication channels can look like in practice. For example, many teams are already using a Microsoft platform and they might use Teams for their meetings. That's an example of where you can use team channels to put async communication. Well, people in your organization might be asking, why haven't we used team channels? Most of us are already paying for the tools we need. For example, if your organization is on Microsoft, then they'll have Microsoft Teams as an option. Now, beyond just, where we go to host meetings, Microsoft Teams has quite a few options for teams to communicate. Teams channels is a great example. Now, why doesn't your organization use the Teams channel more? It might be simply because it's never been outlined as an option for communication, because nobody realizes that using the Teams channel to communicate is an acceptable way to give an update, for example. It's not being utilized in the way that it could. The same applies if your organization runs on Slack or Google or any other messaging platform. The tool itself doesn't really matter. It really comes down to the behavior. What matters is that your team understands that a meeting isn't required for an update. A well thought out message in a chat offers the same update capability and provides the team an opportunity to ask questions, see other questions, and then see the answers and context you provide in real time. Here's what I recommend. Define a communication framework. It doesn't have to be super complex. It just means having an open conversation with the team as to what communication goes in what channel. Perhaps there might be even team members who didn't know that it's okay to put more information in the chat. Maybe defaulting to a meeting is something that we've always done, and that we just need to make it okay and give our teams permission to use other channels. Video updating is a really great option, for example, for either you as the leader to give an update to the team, or video updates are great, or videos can be explainers. So if you're looking to walk the team through something, instead of booking that meeting to go over whatever it is live, use a screen share and video recording platform to walk through how a process works. And then, of course, once you share that with the team, and if there are any other questions that come up, then maybe that's when we've earned a meeting. So that's what I want you to take away from putting the structure in place, is thinking of meeting times as something that gets earned. Now, I've utilized the Teams channel in my own career with my own teams. And at first, it took a bit longer. Instead of, the meeting, defaulting to a meeting is the easiest thing to do, to drop in the calendar and be done with it. But slowing down and thinking through a communication that's going to go in a different forum allowed me to slow down and think about what I need to share, and to ensure really that I have everything that I need to make that communication great. So I invite you to do the same. It might take a bit longer at first, but it's well worth the investment once you get really good at using those other channels. And so in the end, when you're thoughtful about how you communicate and you save that 30 minutes, that act truly compounds across your whole organization across time. When you're thoughtful about communication and you take the extra 2 minutes to write a structured message instead of scheduling a 30-minute update, you save everyone's time, including your own. And that compounds across your organization. The second pillar is keeping your project management tools up to date. As a project manager by trade, I am really passionate about this one. So we realize, hey, we need to be more organized. We need to get better at execution. So someone says, okay, the best way to do that is to get a project management platform. It could be ClickUp, it could be Asana, it could be Smartsheet, Monday, it doesn't really matter. So we go out to the market, we find the tool that works best for us, we implement it, we get all of our structured projects written out with all the tasks populated. They look great, they've got timelines and owners, and then nobody keeps them up to date. It's true. I've seen that over and over. And you might have even had that experience in your own business. The research backs this up. Nearly 51% of organizations surveyed are using a mix of different tools to keep themselves organized. They aren't using a unified system. Over half. That's a crazy number, but that's reflective of what's really happening. 66% of project managers say that they would use their company's project management tool if they had more support. What does that mean? That means that it's everyone's job to keep the project management software up to date. Now, not everybody has a formal project manager on their team. Different organizations do things different ways. The important thing is, though, is that whatever the system is, that you keep it up to date. And this is another way that meetings sneak into our calendars, because we've put all the work into the project management platform, but it's not being kept up to date. We then start to put meetings in the calendar about keeping the tool up to date. Now it seems straightforward and somewhat easy to do on paper, but it's not easy to execute in practice, because it requires discipline. You might have varying degrees of technical capability. It could also be that you have this tool in place, you bought it, but actual training time wasn't spent at the beginning to ensure that everybody knew how to use it and knew what the expectations were about keeping it up to date. Now, just think about what happens when we start keeping the tool itself up to date. We then want to know the status of a project. We can go into that tool and have the confidence that it displays the time, the date, the status that's true and that we expect. And then from there, meetings can emerge, but meetings emerge for working through actual problems and not chasing people to update the tool. And this is the one I encourage so much to really get disciplined to use. 70% of professionals feel that communication challenges have led to wasted time. Doesn't that number probably doesn't surprise you? And of course, a significant part of that communication challenge comes from not knowing where the right information is stored. And again, I'll acknowledge that this isn't necessarily an easy fix within your company, but it is a worthwhile investment to make to get back your time and to get everybody on the same page. And then this leads into my third pillar, which is building a culture of accountability. You can have the best communication tools in the world. You can have the most well-designed project management workspaces that you've ever seen. But if people aren't using them and they're opting out because their way is just easier, that's not okay. When people opt out of the tools at hand and they default to what they do because they find it easier, or if right back to where you started. And here we are spending money on software that we're not using, and our calendars are filling up with meetings once again. And I'm going to say this plainly in 2026, I'm not technical enough is not acceptable. The digital workplace has been evolving for years. Organizations have been investing in software tools for a long time because when people use them, work. But working at your company means that everybody needs to learn how to use that tool, and opting out isn't an option. Now, that doesn't mean throwing your people in the deep end. It doesn't mean taking the people who struggle with these platforms and just saying, get on it. Too bad. It really comes down to providing the right level of support for those who aren't on board. And of course, for the reinforcement of moving from a, we really need you to use this to a, this is the baseline and the standard and the way we work, period. It's important to note, though, that the accountability for using these tools really has to flow upward. I know as leaders, we fall into the trap. We're so busy that we don't actually make time to learn these platforms, for example, or learn these new communication channels. And the struggle is real, is when you don't have time, it's just easier to slot that 30 minutes in your calendar, and then we get caught in the cycle. Now, it becomes so important to model the behavior we want. So if we want to use async channels of communication and keep our project management tools up to date, as leaders, we need to be the one who is modeling that behavior. Research tells us that over 80% of the leaders believe that their communication is clear and engaging, but only 50% of employees agree. That's a rough statistic, but something we should take away and think about. One of the ways I've managed this in the past is to leverage my project manager. Now, if you don't have a project manager, you can identify someone in your team who is super eager and really looking for a challenge or looking to develop. But that person who's going to play the role of project manager can additionally be somebody who helps support the organization in the technical training that's needed to get everybody using the project management tool. And it really means that investing the time up front, especially to the people who aren't, of course, using the tool, so that when you make the updating of the project management tool mandatory, that everybody's on the same page and able to do so. Now, investing in time into ensuring that everybody's using the project management tool means that your project manager can work on additionally higher value work. They're not spending their entire day following up and following up and following up, but they're able to provide really meaningful updates. And additionally, you can trust the data that you see in your project management tool if you've leveraged that project manager to not only be the project manager, but to be that training resource for your team as well when it comes to using the tools properly. And of course, just a reminder when we think about training our people on these tools, those might be meetings, but additionally, those can, of course, be the recorded videos I just talked about. SOPs could be an option as well. Um, and of course, you can have AI tools at your disposal for making those SOP documents faster. So let's bring it all together. You want to fix meeting overload in your organization. It's not about another tool, it's not about another policy. It's really about the structure and changing the structure of how your team communicates. Pillar one, use your communication tools effectively. Think to yourself, does this really need to be a meeting, or can I communicate this clearly in writing? Two, keep your project management tools up to date. And again, I mentioned a bunch of tools, but if the tool you're using is Excel, that's fine. It's just about the discipline of keeping it up to date and, of course, supporting the team as they go on that learning journey. And then three, really digging into that accountability piece. In 2026, being fluent in digital tools is a must. And I'll leave you with this. The research tells us that organizations who reduce their meeting time by 40% increase their productivity on average by 70%. That's incredible. And that is a great goal to work towards. If this resonated with you, I would love if you hit subscribe and comment below. I'd love to hear about your meeting overload and what's that meeting in your calendar that is just so unnecessary. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.